Hello, my name is Alex Pennington, and this is the Aspiring Writers United podcast. I am here with Ashley Early, and we'll be talking about writing advice, editing tips, and coaching for publishing success.
Hey, everybody. This is Ashley. Oh, my God.
We are 10 seconds into the podcast, and we have run out of things to say.
I'm already panicking. The introvert inside me is quivering right now.
Believe it or not, we even actually did make an outline for this. This is very professional.
It's going off the rails already. Let's try to sound more confident here, Alex. Why don't we just give like a little like short introduction?
Yeah. So by the way, this is gold. We're keeping this.
Yes.
So we are both young adult writers. I have been writing for about 7 years now.
Oh, nice. I've been writing for about 10. We're going to pretend that I wasn't writing at 14 though. So we're just going to say like 4 because that is when the real good writing has actually come out instead of repeating the and that every 2 seconds.
Yeah, no, I have kind of the same. I think it's funny because like I got into writing in like middle school. And I'll always remember like my middle school teacher, he got us to write a Halloween spooky story.
Oh.
And I'm pretty sure I was the only one who took it seriously.
I love that though. At least like that's how you got started because I pretty much, my first novel, that's how I got into writing. I just delved right in. Mm-hmm. But my first novel was a definite ripoff of X-Men.
Very nice. Okay, but there have been so many ripoffs of X-Men. So it's kind of like that's just a thing now.
Yeah, it was totally fun, but you could definitely tell how much of a nerd I was for Marvel, like right off the bat.
I feel like that's like the gateway into writing for so many people. Like Marvel, you get the comics or manga or just something that kind of just funnels you right into it.
Yeah, or like especially with like when the YA genre got really big. First it was, not really YA, but like Harry Potter came out and everyone started writing. And then YA really got big once Twilight came out. And between those two series, that's how I got motivated to start writing just like everybody else. So very cliche here.
Yeah, okay, so at least you were like reading the books whenever they came out. So I got into YA I guess it's been like 3 years ago now. But like I spent like a full year reading like The Hunger Games, Harry Potter, just basically getting caught back up on the genre. Because I feel like everyone was talking about these awesome books. And I even remember them coming out. And at the time, I wasn't even a reader.
Wow, that's crazy. I read Twilight and The Hunger Games after it was out, so I didn't have to wait for the books. But it was like right after the last book had been finished for both of those. So it was nice not to have to wait like everybody else.
You see, and I kind of miss that, like just waiting for or just reading a super awesome series and being excited for the next book to come out. I already have like the entire set and I just have to actually read them, but I've been procrastinating them for too long.
You got to get on that like ASAP.
What was the book series that like got you into YA?
I'm going to have to say Twilight. I'm not even sorry about it because the writing is not great. Do not copy Stephenie Meyer. If there's anything you gather from this podcast, which is supposed to be about query letters, and we're getting off topic here, but we'll get back to it. But if you take anything from this podcast, do not copy Stephenie Meyer's writing because she'll literally write, "He chuckled," and then in dialogue, Edward will go, "Ha ha ha."
That is beautiful.
Isn't that?
That is quality.
That is just the most beautiful writing ever. Like I obsessed over it for so long. And that's why we're going to ignore 14-year-old Ashley's writing because it was Stephenie Meyer quality.
But that's proof though. But that's proof that anyone can get published.
Yes, it is. And that was just like a great stepping stone for the whole YA genre in general. It opened up, it really saved the publishing industry as a whole because people finally realized that the target audience should be focused towards younger readers and getting people into reading sooner and to continue that love into adulthood.
I got started into YA with the Eragon series.
Really?
And I am pretty sure I am the only person on the planet who got into YA this way. Like in the Facebook group, by the way, if you are in the Aspiring Writers United Facebook group, please look us up on Facebook. But like I've tried to have conversations with people about the Aragon book series, and everyone's like, "What are you talking about? Who's read these books?"
Really? Okay, I only read the first one, and it was too gory for me because of one particular scene. So I didn't read the rest of them with like the pile of dead bodies.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah, that was when I was turned off, but I did love the story. It was very well constructed. It was way better than the movie, but I did enjoy the movie at the same time.
The movie was awful. That was just
the dragon was beautiful, though. I really did. I wanted a dragon.
So when did you send your first query letter? When did you finally take the leap of faith?
Oh my gosh. Pretty much the second I finished writing my first book. Sadly to say.
I have to say that's also because I feel like whenever you're a writer, you have two stages. The first one is where you think you are terrible at writing and every word that you type is just an absolute train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And then you finish your story and you go into stage 2 of the writer where you think you are the greatest writer that has ever existed and you are about to get a 6-figure publishing contract if you can just shoot this query letter out as fast as you can.
The agents will be fighting over this manuscript.
It's such high quality, and even though you haven't actually edited it yet or let alone read it.
No, of course not. We didn't think of that when we first finished our book.
You've been thinking about this in your mind for so long. It's perfect.
Yeah. It's done. It's ready to go. There, you spelled everything correctly, all the yours and theirs, all right, and it's ready to be sent off.
I still remember speaking of yours and theirs. And this is how bad of a writer I was whenever I first began. I remember whenever I figured out how to use which version of their, and that was like oh my gosh, yeah. I'm a master of grammar now.
I'm sorry to say that I also had that epiphany too. I'm not gonna lie. I was literally like, it literally clicked in my brain. Like, none of the grammar classes that I took help with that at all. It was just like this little click one day while I was writing, and I was like, oh, wow, I've been an idiot for how long?
I think that one of the biggest mistakes that writers make is that because like in school, you're going to write like 1 million essays, right?
Yeah.
So we automatically start expecting ourselves to be amazing writers. Like, I've written 30 essays throughout high school. I automatically now know how to write a novel. I'm going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that does not carry over as well as we would hope.
No, it doesn't. And it's kind of funny. Like as a freelance editor, I see a lot of my clients try to use SAT words in like every couple sentences because they're first-time writers and I love to help them through their writing journeys. But I see that they have all these fancy SAT words to try to sound as professional as possible. And I'm like, this is great, but you don't want your readers to have to pull up Google every 2 minutes. You don't. It's cool to have, SAT words, as I love to call them, every now and then, because then it brings a little spice to your writing, but you don't want to overload that at all.
So I actually have a confession to make about that. And that is that I'm not going to say I have a bad vocabulary, because I think I have a good vocabulary. But as I've been reading all these books, I quickly realized that I didn't know some of these bigger SAT words. And so literally every time I get to a word that I don't recognize in a book, I will actually Google it.
Yeah. I do that too. If I come across a word that I don't recognize, it's just like automatically I'm like, okay, I want to fully understand what, they're talking about, which also like in query letters, I would not do that. I would not include fancy words, SAT words. Do not overload your query with that because the agent that looks at that is probably going to roll their eyes.
And so, speaking of querying, I would like to get into our first piece of advice for the evening. Because as we've not mentioned yet, this podcast episode is about how to write an excellent query letter. So, my first tip I learned from experience, sadly, is that whenever you think that you are ready to query, let's say you've been writing this book for a year, you've done like 3 rounds of revisions, you think that is the best that it's ever been, and it probably is, but just do yourself a favor, and instead of sending that query letter, just set your book aside for about 2 weeks to a month. The more time, the better. And then come back and do one more round of editing. My logic behind this is that you've been, like I said, you've been writing this book for maybe a year, maybe 10, a long time. 1 more month won't ruin your writing career. It's probably not so absolutely amazing that every single literary agent is going to be fighting about it and flooding into your emails. Maybe. Hasn't been my experience personally. But what you'll probably find is that there's small errors, there's small mistakes. And after taking some time off, whenever you come back to actually read it, you see things differently. What I like to do is read a bunch of books that are usually in the genre of what I'm writing, which is, as I said, is usually YA. So basically, I take all this new knowledge from these books I've read and I compare that to my story. And as I'm now doing this next round of editing on my story, I go, wow, it's not quite as good as these books I've been reading. Why is that? Which makes me do more editing, which, although might not be the most entertaining thing to do, it's going to make your story a lot better.
Yeah, and kind of my first tip of the night is going to be kind of along those lines, but it's going to be in terms of editing your query letter and rewriting it several times. Your first query letter is not going to be the one that you're going to send out. I don't recommend that ever, because it's not going to be perfect right off the bat, first of all, because you're just learning. You're refamiliarizing yourself with the story, and you're trying to put that down on paper in very few sentences. You're talking about the entire book in a few sentences. So what I always recommend is to basically go through Google and search up the most successful query letters and try your best to emulate that, but with your own writing style and with your own novel, because that's really going to show your agent or the agents that you're querying your personality and what you're bringing to the table. And that's usually what catches their attention.
Along with that, my next tip is know why you're querying that agent. I really like that point that you made up, looking up example letters and kind of following the format, because there really is a specific format. And especially if you can see the books that agent has published, and let's say you like their books, which is a great reason to query that agent. You can actually find sometimes the specific letters that those authors that you like use to query that agent.
Yeah, which it's always cool to see that online. I do that with every query letter that I write. I'm not going to lie, because I'm always coming back to the drawing board. Everyone is. When you finish a brand new novel, you're coming back to the drawing board and trying to teach yourself again how to write a query letter, but either with a different genre, a completely different story with completely different characters. So you have to bring all of that together in a query letter to show what the overall picture is. Is this agent going to love these characters? Are they going to love the conflict in the story? They have to be captivated and engaged right off the bat, which goes into my second tip of the day, which you need to, in these query letters, you need to have conflict. You need to up the stakes. You need to state what kind of stakes are in your story. And every sentence needs to captivate that agent. No matter who's reading it, really. It needs to capture everybody that, everyone that looks at that page needs to understand what's going on in your story and needs to be pulled in immediately. And again, you don't want to overload your query with fancy words. You can use maybe one, maybe two, but I wouldn't open your old SAT textbook or study book and go through that and try to find something to replace advanced or advice.
Whenever you say stakes, how would you define that? Because I just from reading reading a lot of like posts about this kind of stuff, something that I have seen consistently is that often there's not enough conflict in books. So how could a writer go about setting the stakes and kind of upping the ante?
That is a good question. I would say, all right, let's use Harry Potter as an example because I feel like that's a good, hopefully most people have read it or watched the movies, but you see in each of the movies that the overall conflict is things that are going on in school in Harry Potter's life. And then usually in line with that is that Voldemort's around or he's up to something. And that's usually what the stakes are. That's the conflict, is that he's there, he's somewhere, he's planning something. What is he planning? And that anxiety that is induced is what the stakes are. And you're trying to figure out, what am I going to lose? What is up to be lost if Voldemort succeeds in his plans?
Something that I realized not long ago, and by not long ago, I mean like a month ago, that I was trying to figure out the title for my current work in progress. And basically what I realized, and I was actually looking at the Harry Potter books, the Percy Jackson books, and something else. But basically what they often do is that they put the conflict in the title.
Really?
And, well, I mean, think about it. The Chamber of Secrets. What is the conflict of this book?
Okay.
It's about the Chamber of Secrets being open.
Yeah.
The Lightning Thief. What's the conflict of that book? Well, somebody stole Zeus's bolt of lightning, I think, because I read it in like the 10th grade. But so often what by embedding that, it kind of like, it kind of says that the writer actually knows what their story is about. And it gives, the agent something to look forward to. It might intrigue them. That's why a snappy title can often induce that conflict and go, wow, this book is actually about something.
That is really interesting. I never noticed that. So I love that you just figured that out recently, because you telling me that right now, that's an epiphany.
You're going to be looking at your bookshelf in a whole new way.
I know. I wish my bookshelf was in here, because I would honestly be scanning it right now to, find all the clues, and like the Easter eggs. But have you been successful in figuring out your title then, if it's been like a month?
So what was, I think that I'm going with the Isle of Ainsof, which nobody knows. And that's why I probably won't. I don't know. I go back and forth on that title. Basically,
go ahead.
That title, it's the name of God in Kabbalah, Judaic mysticism, which is kind of a theme throughout my book.
Okay.
But once again, I don't know. I feel like I need something with a little more conflict, a little catchier. Because at the same time, you don't want the agent to read your title and go, I have no idea what this is. I mean, maybe they'll Google it and be interested. Probably not. I
don't know. Because, think about the original title for the first Harry Potter book.
What was it?
It's Sorcerer of Stone, but the original, the Philosopher's Stone.
That's actually still the title in England.
I know it is, and I love that. I don't know why they changed it for the U.S. because they were worried that people wouldn't understand what philosopher was.
Well, yeah, they don't know what the Philosopher's Stone is.
Yeah, so it's doing something like that. Yes, they did change that title, but an agent can still suggest a different title for your book. I've heard that happens sometimes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's say an agent does pick up your book. I mean, and they sell it to a publishing house. I'm pretty sure it's the publishing house who's actually going to decide the title of your book. So at least, take some pressure off your shoulders.
That's a little scary for me. I do want to be traditionally published, but I'm not opposed to being self-published. So because I like to have the creative control of the book cover and the title, and Yeah,
I'm just the opposite. I'm like, you know what, you guys, you know what you're doing. You've done this 100 times. Good luck. Come on, Tor. You know you want this book.
Well, I feel I can definitely get down with that opinion with some of my books for sure. Because I'm like, I feel so lost. Please help me. But I've been working on a horror novel for the better part of a year now. And I'm set on the title. And I know that the story can use some work. And that's what I'm doing right now. But if they were like, oh, we want you to change the ending or we want you to change the title, I don't think I could, because the title is so ingrained into the book that I feel like that it's a good title. It's a strong title. And I wouldn't be able to separate with it.
Even for like $80,000?
Well, what if I could make that being
true? True. Very true. What is the title of your book?
It's Heart of Skulls.
Ooh, okay, that sounds pretty good, actually.
Yeah, so I can't part with it. That or the ending. So, yeah, I can't, because it's just it's so personal and like ingrained in my mind that I don't feel like I could part with that.
Isn't that such a good feeling as a writer whenever like you have that personal connection to your book?
Yes, and I've only felt that personal connection like twice. I'm not going to lie. It's been with this horror novel. And then before I wrote this horror novel, I, like 3 or 4 years ago, wrote this fantasy novel, YA fantasy. Love it. Love it to death. I could definitely use a better title. But I feel very personal to that one. That one I would happily hand over to a traditional publishing house and be like, do whatever, tell me what to do with this, please.
I don't know what I'm doing with this book.
I know that it can be great. I need some guidance with it.
No, but that's without something I really like about publishing or traditional publishing right there. The fact that, you have like a team of editors. Okay, maybe not a team, you have a editor. But there's like so much structure to it where I feel like with self-publishing, you're kind of just out there on your own, searching through Reddit and BuzzFeed, how to self-publish my book.
Yes.
Or at least that's what when there was a time and place when I was thinking about self-publishing something, and I ultimately didn't. But I was like, wow, there's not a lot of stuff out here. This is not easy.
Oh, yeah, no. I actually did self-publish 2 books.
Links will be down in the description.
No, please, no. I wrote those in high school, if that gives anyone any perspective whatsoever. But it's really hard because I actually did not hire an editor for those books. So as an editor, I don't recommend that. I know that I've seen in our Aspiring Writers United Facebook group that a lot of people are against hiring an editor. And I'm not saying this as a
really
editor. Yeah. I'm not saying this just because I am a freelance editor. I just started because I just graduated. I'm just starting up this business, but so much comes from the editing process that if you don't have an outside perspective guiding you and encouraging you to improve your work and be like, I like to call myself like a cheerleader. And one of my clients is actually kind enough to be like, oh, she'll cheer you on during the whole process, even after she's done editing your book, after I was finished helping her out. But you need structure from another person, a professional that's outside of your story that can see inconsistencies or where the plot could really come out more, or what character can be strengthened to be a bigger part of the plot. And I feel like that it's so weird to see a lot of people that are looking to be self-published are against hiring an editor.
Okay, so I'm really curious. Why is that?
Because a lot of people, or some people, are scared to have their story changed too much.
Oh, yeah.
They're very personal with their book, which I completely understand.
That's why they're going self-publishing route, probably.
Yeah. And as a writer, I completely, understand not wanting to change your work, but it's changing your work for the better. What I like to do is I offer 1,000-word samples before I work with somebody to make sure that we're on the same page and that we're going to work together well. And I say work with. work together well, because you really are working together. When you hire an editor, you're working together to make this book into something greater than it was for the first draft or second draft or whatever it was. And I lost my train of thought.
It's funny you say it. So right now I'm re-editing my book. Well, I'm doing a whole rewrite. But what I'm doing is I'm actually having a really close friend of mine read it. But she actually doesn't, she reads some fantasy, but she's mostly a nonfiction writer. And the way I kind of approached this was that, as a writer, what is our number one job as writers?
To get it on the page.
Yes, but to entertain. Entertain the reader.
Yes.
That's why we write. That's why we read movies, watch movies. That's why we read movies, yes.
You can read a movie. Subtitles.
Yeah, exactly. But so as I was rewriting this, I was looking and going, so I've read a lot of fantasy books and stuff. If I was wanting to give somebody one fantasy book to make them fall in love with the genre, they had like everything we love, all the tropes, all the everything. Mm-hmm. What would I give them? And basically, I tried to put that into my story. I went, okay, you know what? We're going to try going all out on this. And whenever you kind of do that and just start thinking, okay, how could I spice this up? What are some books that just hooked me up immediately? And what did they do versus what I'm doing? That made me reinvent the entire beginning of my story. Just trashed it. We're rewriting this, which is a good thing. It's a lot of work and I've been doing it for weeks. But at the same time, wow, this is quite a bit better, hopefully, than what I had before.
Yeah. And that's kind of, I've recaptured my train of thought, but that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's for me, I prefer to call myself more of a suggestive editor. I don't like to take away the writer's voice. And that's what I see people complaining about in our Aspiring Writers United group, is that they've hired these editors and they've gone through this process and the editors completely changed the voice of the writer. And I think that's so sad, because as a writer, that's you, that's your substance. Those are your words that you chose and everything. And that's something to be said. But at the same time, to make your story stronger, you need someone questioning, why did you choose this particular word? Why did you write this sentence this way? And why did you do the plot this way? Just stuff like that. So I like to do a suggesting thing, and the person can go in and either take or reject the suggestion that I made.
You there still?
Yeah, did you lose me?
Oh, I thought I did for a second.
Okay.
There you are. Sorry, we can cut that out. But okay, so that actually reminds me of a really good Neil Gaiman quote. I'm pretty sure Neil Gaiman. He said, if a editor ever tells you what's wrong with your story, they're always right. But if they tell you how to change it, they're always wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think that really, it's your voice. And you need that objective opinion to say, hey, this doesn't work for me. And once again, maybe you'll love it and go, no, I have to have that in my story.
Yeah.
But often you'll look at what they're saying and go, okay, I kind of see what you're saying there.
Yeah. And that's exactly how I feel. So you need to send me that quote, because I need that in my office.
Neil Gaiman, he's just full of amazing quotes. The greatest.
Yeah. But we should probably, talk about queries.
This is about querying. So I have, so tip 2, because I'm only on tip 2.
Yes.
So know why you're querying the agent. So once again, back in the old days of when Alex thought he was going to be an instant bestseller with his 250,000 word manuscript, which nothing wrong with writing a 250,000 word manuscript, though I would encourage you to edit said manuscript before sending it to agents, and maybe looking at what the appropriate word count is for your genre and all that good stuff. But
that we can cover in another podcast for sure.
But know why you are querying that specific agent. I mean, think about this. Your book is your baby. I mean, we all want to be published, but we want to be published with the right agent, with the right publisher. I mean, how horrible would that be to finally get an agent and just a disaster? Like, let's say they just want to change everything in your book, and they don't actually really like the book. Maybe they like the idea more. You know, you can find horror stories of this on the internet. But it's really important to know why that you are choosing this specific person. My recommendation for this is to query agents who either represent the genre that you're writing, which is that's good advice, but also look at books that you enjoy. I mean, if you really enjoy books by, say, Brandon Sanderson, and your book is kind of like a Brandon Sanderson book, why not try to query his agent? I mean, maybe you'll get rejected, but maybe this person will be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I actually saw somebody on Instagram, they did this, and Brandon Sanderson's agent loved it and is now editing their book.
Oh, wow. And that is great advice, because that's something that I do all the time. Like, all you have to do is really just go to the acknowledgments page of any book that's similar to yours, and you can find that author's agent immediately.
Yeah, no, I mean, whenever we all get published, that will be the first thing in our acknowledgments. Thank you for making this possible.
Mm-hmm.
But so that also goes into my third tip, which is, if you're going to find the agent that you like based on that, use comparative titles in your query letters. I mean, something that's really important to know is, what other books is your book like? And please, I've read this 1,000 times, don't say that your book is so unique there's never been anything written like it before. And the reason I say that, because I basically did that. And it's just not true. I did some pretty bad query letters.
Oh, Alex.
Like, they were pretty bad. I violated every single rule that we have told you tonight. I'm pretty sure I also queried at like midnight.
Oh. I guess you didn't do the whole, I see this a lot on Twitter. Or I shouldn't say a lot. I see it too frequently is probably the correct verbiage here. That an agent, because I follow a lot of agents, they will talk about how you really, really should not bust in with your query letter going, this is the next Harry Potter, this is the next Hunger Games, and you need to publish me right now. That is not what we're saying here.
No. I mean, hey, maybe it is. But don't, have some humility. Because when you get some rejection letters, you will get some humility.
Yeah, don't come in being like, you're making a big mistake if you reject me.
But what's really nice about finding comparative titles is, one, it gives you some confidence. I mean, think about this. If there are a bunch of books just like your book that have been published, I mean, yeah, you can say, well, there's so many out there, they'll never love my book. But more likely, there are a lot of these books out there because people love them and they sell well. So also look at what those books did and go, okay, how does my book compare? Am I doing something super awesome and original that's like a spin on this that the agent will find interesting? You just never know. But you know two things. One, the market likes those books. The agent probably likes that book. And you have a good idea. And that's pretty confidence inspiring.
Yeah, confidence is very key to a query letter, a successful one, I feel like, because you're coming in and really showing your personality and your book at the same time in a query letter. But that kind of goes into my last tip for this thing, is that I'm going to go over the format of a query letter. And I'm definitely going to tell you when you should include these comparative titles that Alex is talking about. So at the start of a query letter, you're going to want to address the agent at the beginning. And I'm going to speak from experience here. Double check to make sure that you're sending the query letter to the right agent, and that address is the correct address that you should be using.
I
So
too am guilty of this.
Yes, I have sent at least 2 or 3 queries that are dressed like one agent, and I'm sending it to a completely different agent. And it's so embarrassing after you realize that you did that. So mortifying. Have you done this?
Yes, I have. And I've also misspelled their name.
Oh no.
Which is, once again, I'm like a giant do not do this sign for everybody listening right now.
We've all been there. We've all done that.
Okay, one more because it just popped into my head.
Okay.
Don't query every single agent in that literary agency. This kind of goes back to my point of knowing why you're querying that specific agent. Don't spam the whole agency with query letters.
Yeah, they usually have just like one email address now, and they're like, you need to just say who you're querying in the subject of the email, which I think is why they started doing that, because a lot of people were spamming the whole agency.
I definitely did not do that because it's not like fishing, and if you just throw a bunch of them out there, you might get some bites.
I can say that that's like the one thing on this whole list tonight that I have not done that.
You're better than me, actually.
There we go. I have a one up. But okay, let me get back to the format of a query letter real quick before we go off into another tangent here. So you want to address the correct agent in the beginning of your email. And then you're going to just want to write like 2 short paragraphs about the book. And then this is where the comparative titles are going to come in. This is going to be included in your seeking representation paragraph, is what I like to call it. I usually like to include this at the end. Some people include it at the beginning. I include it at the end because I like to include a pitch really at the end of it to state, this is my book title. This is what it's about. This is the overall summary with the word count and everything. So I'll go like book title, such and such book is about battling inner demons and is rough as approximately 60,000 words, and then you'll want to include your comparative titles with, the title and then the author as well. So they can easily look that up if they don't know what title you're referring to. If it's just like a small, relatively unknown book, not Harry Potter, not Twilight, not Hunger Games.
I would also like to say on that, I'm not going to say don't mention really small titles, but just from the sheer fact of name recognition, try to mention the bigger name title first. Mm-hmm. Now, at the same time, if you're on that literary agent's website, which you have researched thoroughly, and you go, wow, they like this kind of obscure book that not many people know about, definitely mention that. That could get you some big points and to show that you're actually putting in the effort.
Yes. I completely agree with that, especially with putting the bigger name title first, because it stands out more. But do you want to go into answering questions now? Because I kind of have a question from someone on Twitter.
Yeah, let's do that.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
So this person, shout out to Adam B. And she asked, how important is a personal bit aimed at the agent, i.e. why them?
Oh, it's really important. From what I've read, something that agents hate is the copy and paste query letter, where they can just tell, hey, you have a list of 20 agents that you're sending your book to. You probably don't even know me besides my name, which you read somewhere. And you just copy and pasted this into an email.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't know how personal to get other than, if you know what author this agent represents is close to your book, or you just in general, just mention that. Say, hey, I know that you represent this author and I love this book, such and such. And I really admire that you put this out into the world.
Also, if say they follow you on Twitter, mention that. Or if by some miracle you met this agent at a pitching contest, I think that's the proper name for those, or just talk to them or have some connection. I would say anything to help you stand out is going to put you above everyone else.
Yes. Think of it as it's really like a resume. You know,
Yeah.
you're trying to stand out a bunch of, hundreds of thousands of candidates that they get a year,
And I mean, that's exactly what it is. Because I mean, it's money for them. This is a business thing. They're wanting to make money by giving your book to a publishing agency. And, they probably get hundreds of submissions every single day. So if they go, oh, wait, I know this person, they might actually have some pretty good content here. They'll probably be more likely to actually open up your email and read it, or even ask if they go, hey, maybe there's something here. They might ask you for some more pages.
Have you had that happen yet?
No, I have not.
Oh, it's amazing. I've had one full manuscript request, and it was like
full.
Yeah, a full. It was for my YA fantasy that I mentioned earlier. It was an amazing feeling. It got all the way up to the editorial staff. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah. This was like a few years ago. And that's why this book is on the back burner, because I kind of got my heart broken. So
you got to self-publish that or give that? Man, it sounds like you were like right there. I mean, like you were like 90% into making it.
Oh, I know. And then, YA fantasy, that genre is so overwhelmed right now that they don't want to publish it. So it's on the back burner. Trust me, my critique partner will not let me forget this book because I have this whole series planned. It's just sitting, waiting for me to come back to it, really.
How many books in the series?
I was planning on 3 and then a novella or 2.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. So it was going to be, it was going to be a thing, but I got like halfway done with the sequel and I finished writing the novella. That's like the prequel for the first book. So.
Dang. Yeah. You have to get that out.
I do miss it. And I will do it one day. It'll, either self-publish or traditionally published, but my critique partner will never let me forget it because she's obsessed with one of the characters and she won't let it go.
So let me just check my Twitter. Oh, I do have a couple of comments.
Ooh, let's hear it.
So, in progress author here, my writing group hath pitch sessions with agents, which are very helpful. Commonalities are be polite. Oh, these are tips, not questions. But be polite, get their name right, emphasize why you're submitting to them, follow the rules, and check your grammar. Add a strong log line, and you're ahead of the game. I really like that. Like having, I like the idea because, you see it's on the back of books. There's usually like some kind of one sentence thing to hook you. And just being able to deliver that to the agent, I think will kind of give you a nice step above the competition.
Oh, yeah. And that's totally what I was talking about with like at the end of your letter of rep, at that seeking representation paragraph, like at the end of your query, you need to have like that hook, that pitch that, what I was talking about with this book title is about battling your inner demons. Like have some kind of hook. I just came up with something random, but have that hook that's like at the, front of a book, back of a book, whatever, that like really grabs your attention.
I was on Reddit. I looked up some of these on Reddit and I just found a really good one. Let's be as specific as possible on 2 conflicts. The world and the personal. Make sure you clearly answer what happens to the world if the hero fails, what happens to the hero if they fail. And I think that's something that not a lot of authors realize, is that there's 2 conflicts that get the reader interested. It's, like they said, it's the one, what's happening in the world? Who's the big villain trying to destroy the planet? But at the same time, why does this matter to the character?
Yes.
Like, what are the stakes for them?
Yes. This is actually something that I brought up with my last client for editing. She requested a developmental editing service from me. And the number one question that I had, she did really well with the overall like plot, the physical, whatever plot you want to call it, of the story. But I was lacking in the characters' conflict. And that was all I said for that. I was like, what is her desire? What is she going to lose if she does not succeed in her goals.
I actually just kind of did this on my story. Well, something that I kind of learned from this is that you need to write two stories in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need to have okay, this is the macro story, this is the conflict affecting the world. But then you can have a whole separate conflict, something completely unrelated, affecting the main character. Something I like to think about is the first couple of chapters of Harry Potter with the Dursleys. The reason those worked were because you put this main character in this absolutely terrible situation, and he's getting bullied and shoved in a closet. You can't help but want to find out what happens.
Yes. That's funny too, because I'm actually doing the same thing with my horror novel. I realized there wasn't enough personal conflict.
Yeah, no, and I like to show the thoughts of the characters. I know that this doesn't happen as much in books. Sometimes it does. But opposed to like having a whole paragraph telling you how the character is feeling, I'll just have italics what they're thinking about. But you can really show conflict this way of showing, hey, they have anxiety about this. They're really worried about this. And just seeing that inner conflict will, once again, make the reader go, okay, how are they going to get through this? Are they going to be okay? And it's, it doesn't always have to be the end of the world to be a conflict, because that's never how it is in life.
Yes, very true. I that's an excellent piece of advice. So try to do that in your query letter for sure, because Alex is right. There's more than one conflict in the story, and you need to have that character conflict for sure.
Another really good one here on this list I found. Main plot only. You can hint at the subplots, but really they're only interested in the most mainstream conflict in your book. And something I'll say about this is that if you have a subplot that is like your favorite thing in the book, maybe make that the main plot.
Yeah. Or, you could probably include it in like a very small, like a slip in,
Yeah.
If it flows right. I wouldn't like shove it in there, but I would try to get it to flow right, and where maybe this agent will love it just as much as you do. Oh, I found a really interesting question. So if you're going to have a series, do you go an overarching explanation, or do you just cover the first book?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would go with the first book, because, obviously, if you don't get the first book published, there won't be a series.
Mm-hmm.
But I would then have, so let's say, just for example, because once again, I'm doing a series. I have written the first book, and I'm outlining the second book, or I know what it's going to be about. I would pitch my letter as the first book, but at the very end, I would say, I'm also working on the second book in a, say, 5-book series. And from here, then just give like a sentence or two about what the second book will be about. Because, you might actually hook the agent with that second book. If you throw out 2 really good hooks, the agent might go, wow, so wait a minute. This book goes from this first thing into this really awesome and hopefully, conflict-driven story. I got to see what happens here. How did this all come about?
Yes, and I love that. You ding, 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 ding. You answered this correctly. Speaking from experience and lots of research, you are supposed to query just the first book, and then mention at the end of your query that you're planning on multiple books in the series.
So I'm looking through Reddit right now, because Reddit is every writer's best friend.
Yes.
So whenever we're talking about kind of having the big overarching conflict and the smaller micro conflict, they actually have 2 really great examples. I think everyone knows what they're talking about here. So have your world conflict. An example is the big bad wizard wants to take over the world. But then you have the personal conflict. That bad wizard wants to kill the main character. So you have also this overarching threat, but also this small micro threat that's directly in the main character's face. Another one being, well, basically it's the Hunger Games. You have a totalitarian government and their death matches, right? But then you have the small personal conflict of the main character, they wanting to save their sister.
Yeah, that's great. I don't know where you are on Reddit, but this is...
I just actually hit the scroll button at random on accident. Oh. And as I was going back up the page, like, wow, that's actually a really good point.
I love that.
You never know an inspiration will strike. Always be watching Reddit.
Yes. And I did find another tip through Twitter. This person says that to query agents in batches of like 10, and when all of those turn you down, rework the query.
So
I don't know. I'm kind of iffy about this one.
I feel like that's something that sounds better in practice, or in theory than in practice. I feel like, okay, so whenever we think about querying batches, what is the goal of querying a batch of agents?
To try to get one person to at least request 5 pages, maybe.
Exactly. It's like, well, if I query 10, I got a 10% chance. If I query 20, I got more probability or whatever. Mm. But I would say refrain from doing that. And instead, find one agent you really like, who you believe will be just absolutely perfect for your story, and just absolutely research them. Know where they went to college, know what kind of books they read in middle school. If they're on Twitter, go read their tweets. It sounds like a lot of research, but...
You're asking our audience to stalk someone.
And I'm not... Okay, be honest to your audience. You have done this before. You do it on your favorite celebrities. I know you do.
Yeah, so just copy what you do with the Kardashians and do it on Twitter.
Treat your agent like a Kardashian. Quote of the podcast right there.
Oh my God, we're including that in the body of the description. But,
yes, we are.
So are you saying to just like pick your favorite and query that person?
Quality over quantity.
Really?
Yeah, no, you know what? Okay, so most of the time, and once again, maybe if you are a super experienced writer and you have credentials and a bunch of awesome stuff going for you, then you can do batches. I don't.
Wow.
Or at least I wouldn't feel like I don't want to do that for myself. I would rather put in the time and find one agent. Or maybe 3 agents, maybe I find one agent I absolutely love and I query them, and then I wait a couple weeks and I find another I love. But
that is so interesting to me because I do it in batches of like 5 to 20.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's a lot of agents.
Yeah. When I started when I was younger, because 14, 16, 17, 18-year-old Ashley was just going for it. But I read
tenacity.
Oh yeah. I read that you need to basically you need to do batches. And I wouldn't say, do 10. I like your idea of querying agents that you love. And that's where my batches of 5 come in. But I don't rework my query if that doesn't work. Maybe I'll look at it and rework maybe one sentence that I didn't like, and I'll go back to the drawing board or whatever. But I usually edit my query letter hundreds of times actually before I even think of sending it out. So that's where batches of 5 come in, where I'm like, okay, I love these agents and I would love to be represented by them. And then I do batches of 20, usually the first time I query, to see what happens there and see if my query letter is up to par where I think it is. If I don't get any requests, then I go back to the drawing board, and that's when I go to batches of 5.
I will say that when it comes to reworking your query letter, if you have an agent say something that they don't like about your book, okay, for me back in the day, when I was querying my 250,000 word manuscript, which I don't advise unless you are really, really confident in yourself.
Or Stephen King.
Exactly, Stephen King. Yeah, but also edit your book, because once you edit it, it'll probably be closer to like 150,000 words. If you get advice from an agent, so in my case, I'm not saying they laughed at me, but I could feel the sarcasm through their reply. You know, something like, why would, or like, you're a new author, why are you querying a 250,000 word book? At first, I was kind of upset about that. I was like, wow, that's a rude thing to say. And then I thought about it and went, they are kind of right. Like, they're making a good point. And I split it up into I made it a duology, so 2 books, which I do recommend. You know, 2 books that are 125,000 words are probably more likely to succeed than one giant 50,000 word beast. But don't take query letters or rejection letters personally. Just, you know, it's part of the business. It's like editing. It's just another step in the writing process that will make you better in the long run.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And oh my gosh, I'm trying to go through Reddit right now to find more advice and stuff, but there's not a whole lot here right now.
Yeah, it's mostly comments.
Yeah, it's not like questions or advice. It's more like cheering people on, which is great to see.
Something I will say, and the reason I say is because I see this a lot in our writing group, never pay an agent to read your letter. And even if you're self-publishing, the money should always flow towards you. And that's not even my advice, it's Brandon Sanderson's advice. That's where I heard this from. And it was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of scammers out there.
Oh, yes. Personal experience here, actually, I had through advertisements, publishing houses, guys, professional ones, don't use ads.
No.
So don't click on those ads. But 14-year-old Ashley definitely clicked on those ads and submitted her full manuscript to this publishing house that wanted me to pay them to publish it.
Yeah, vanity publishers.
Yeah, do not do this. After doing that, I did research the publishing house and saw that it was a scam thing. And because I was, brand new to this world. So I did not know anything about writing. I did not know anything about publishing, nothing. So I did research the publishing house after that, and I did not continue to work with them. It was just, okay, they have my manuscript. They can do whatever with that. Again, it was an X-Men ripoff, so they probably would have been sued anyway to some degree, but, do not pay.
Don't do it. I know you guys want to throw money at this, but hold your wallet back.
Yeah, it's not going to go anywhere. You're better off self-publishing than going with one of those quote unquote publishing houses that want you to pay them.
Also, if a publishing house or agent reaches out to you without you actually reaching out to them, okay, maybe you're the luckiest person on the planet, and Random House reaches out to you and saying, hey, we saw your tweet about your book. We want to publish you. But for the most of us, if this happens, it's probably a scammer.
Yeah, you want to make sure it's actually Random House. Instead of just like a copycat account being like, oh, I'm this big publishing house. Don't you want to work with me?
But if they're reaching out to you, though, it's more likely that they're wanting your money and they're just wanting to give you money for your book.
Yes. That is really good advice. I didn't think about saying that in this podcast, so I love that you brought that up because that happens way too often, and people need to know that that's not okay, that that's not how it's supposed to work.
And something I like to say, too, is that if you are querying, go rent from your library the newest edition of the Writer's Market. That's my number one place. I've heard people using, I think call it Query Shark. Have you heard of that?
No.
Yeah, but I mean, there maybe like Query Source. There's a couple on there that I
Query
thought.
Tracker. That's the only
Query
one.
Tracker. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
No, there's a Query Shark. I'm pretty sure.
I feel like I've heard of that.
I don't know.
But I've always liked the writer's market because, well, one, I can go get it in my library and it's free. But you know, it has like 50 pages of agents that are 100% accredited and checked, and it has like these are the books they're interested in, and there are even like usually pages on how to actually write your query letter. It's an amazing resource for a writer. It'll cost you like $100 to buy it off Amazon, so that's why I say just go to your library and rent it. But it's an amazing resource to just know, hey, these are all the legit publishers in the market.
Are you talking about the book that they release every year, The Guide to Literary Agents?
Yes.
They're not that expensive.
Really?
I thought they were like $20-$30.
Okay, maybe they're not that expensive. Okay.
I'm looking at one right now because like the last one I bought was in 2017.
Oh, you bought one?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Never mind. Yeah, $25.
Yeah, and I only bought it because I wanted to highlight the agents that I wanted to query.
You actually wrote in a book?
Yeah. I highlighted, and then there's Post-its in here that have writings on them, but I did not write on the book.
How about to say I'm ending the recording and
I did just think of a really good advice that I started doing this recently. Alex, you probably won't use this since you don't query a lot of agents, but what I do is I like to do, like I'll create an Excel spreadsheet of the agent's name, the website of the agency, the email that I used, and whether or not they accepted or rejected it. And I usually title this with the title of my book, so I know which one I was querying out that year. And that's how I keep up with who I've already queried and who I haven't queried yet. So I have like this whole list of agents that I could potentially query. And then I'll just go down the list and do, okay, I'm going to start with 5, or I'll start with 20, or start with 10, whatever number you want to start with. And then once you start to get responses through your email or a query tracker, Query Shark, whatever it is, you can go in and, highlight the text green or red. Green if they obviously like ask for a request, or red if they were like, hell no, you sent me 250,000 words. So that's a no.
That's really good advice. I'm pretty sure I did query the same agent twice because I made that mistake.
Yes, I did that. Mm-hmm.
That's a good idea. And I just know a lot of people here are going to batch query because we're writers and we do that.
Yes.
But that's a really smart idea, actually, having an Excel sheet and like an actual system in place.
Yeah,
in order to know, hey, how am I actually doing here?
Yes, I did query the same agent twice, and they were like, they were like, what the hell? So that's when I started doing that, keeping up with it, so I wouldn't do that again because it was, embarrassing. It's like writing an email addressed to one agent when you really send it to another one. It's embarrassing. So I started making these Excel spreadsheets so I could keep up with, okay, these are the 20 agents that I want to query. These are the websites. These are the names of the agents. These are the names of their company. This is how many pages I sent out to them. I sent a query letter. I sent 5 pages. I did that. I do that every time I query.
And I think that actually rolls into another really good tip. That is to obey the submission guidelines. Because I know you don't want to do it.
You don't even look.
Yeah, exactly. I know they say only send the query letter, but you want to send those first 3 chapters. You're itching to do it. Just hold back. You probably are. I mean, if they want, they'll request them. But it's just funny being like a first time writer. And then once again, I'm just being all nostalgic about my failures as a new writer. You want to get your story out there. You're like, I have something amazing. If I can just put this in the hand of an agent, I'm going to get a 6-figure publishing contract in a week. It's going to happen. So, but if you can just resist the urge, obey the submission guidelines, and And once again, it's all about taking the time to study the agent, the agency, really digging into it. You can probably save yourself a lot of headache.
Yeah. And the submission guidelines are either actually under a tab that says submission guidelines contact, or they'll have that information under the bio of that agent. So it's possible to find it. All of them have guidelines. So you don't just wing it and be like, okay, well, I couldn't find it, because they all have guidelines, all of them.
I feel like this entire podcast is just like calling me out. just a big attack session for Alex.
We've all done it. We've all done everything that's been mentioned in this podcast. And you and I are coming from this perspective of, please don't do this.
Please don't do this.
We have learned, we have done it. We are telling you not to do it.
It's just funny. I mean, you spend all this time writing this amazing book, and then like, okay, you're like 20% of the way done now. Now you just need to actually figure out how to summarize this 100,000 word book into a single page. Easy peasy.
Or even worse, you'll have to write that dreaded synopsis, because in the guidelines, sometimes agents will request that. And I will admit that I have ignored their request for a synopsis before, because I was like, really don't feel like spending 2 weeks writing this, then revising it and re-revising it and rewriting it and going into this continuous cycle. If they ask for a synopsis, you write that synopsis.
Do it. It is worth it. Well, you spent a year writing your book. Take the 2 weeks to write your synopsis.
Even if it takes you a month, just like pour yourself several cups of coffee, pour yourself several cups of tea to get through it. Put on a funny TV show. You can do that while you're writing.
Drink some whiskey, because you're going to probably be in a bad mindset by the end of this.
You know what? Ernest Hemingway said it best. Write drunk and edit sober.
Yes. The man, the genius.
And he really is.
But, oh God, yeah, synopsis is
that's something else we will tackle in another podcast. So I feel like we've talked enough. I think we have anyway.
Yeah, I think we should probably end it here. Thank you all for listening to the rambling of our first podcast.
I felt like we did pretty good staying on subject for the most part,
I think the ramblings are entertaining. You learn something, at least.
Yeah, especially, the first 5 minutes of this podcast where we just talked and forgot the subject of this podcast.
Well, we talked about editing. It became an editing podcast episode, and then we turned it back around into a querying podcast episode.
Well, editing is part of the process.
You have to edit before you
query. You have to edit while you query.
But, if you are looking to promote your book, if you're a self-published author, if you're looking to grow your platform, I'd encourage you to join our Facebook group. We have almost 60,000 people in there now, 60,000 future readers. You can promote your book. You can promote your social media. It's a community of writers, editors, even a couple agents. And, it's an amazing community, and they will give you more advice than you've even heard here tonight.
Yes. And I think next time, what do you want to talk about? We could talk about first chapters. We could talk about editing, since we went on a tangent about editing.
I was thinking, just because I'd seen this pop up a couple of times, either outlining or marketing or editing would be a really good one.
Oh gosh, I'm a plantser, so outlining's not my forte, but that would be fun. That would be interesting to talk about.
Okay, and I'm the opposite, because I am a hardcore outliner.
Oh wow. Okay, so we could do like a debate.
Okay,
that would be fun.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're debating this.
Our next episode will be about outlining, guys.
The debate of how to write a book.
I like it.
Thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you guys in the group.
Yep. Thank you guys for listening.